Joe Biden is going full steam ahead with a radical makeover of America, claiming that he has a mandate from the American people to do so. But does he really? Our next guest says, no, he does not. Byron York, chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner and Fox Business contributor, joining us now. Hi, Byron. Look, whether we need a transformation or not, whether Americans want a transformation or not, that appears to be what we are getting. Because of the various processes, and it may get worse from certain perspectives if they get rid of the filibuster, if they get a state that's purely Democrat, if they pack the Supreme Court. So will there be time for a pushback, a popular pushback, if in fact this is not what Americans want?
Yes, I think so. We hear a lot of Democrats talking about Joe Biden as the new FDR or the new LBJ. But the voters have given Biden nowhere near the power that they gave FDR and LBJ. When voters want presidents to do big things, they give them big majorities. They give them big victories, both in their personal election and in Congress. And if you look at what happened in the 1930s with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he won election with 472 electoral votes and then re-election with 523. The 1936 election was 523 to 8 in the Electoral College. Lyndon Johnson won, it was 523 to 8, it was. Lyndon Johnson in 1964 won 486. And both of them had huge House majorities.
Right.
In the 30s, Roosevelt's House total hit 334 with 76 senators. And now, and Johnson had 68 senators, 295 in the House. Now compare that to where we are today, a tiny, bare majority of 218 Democrats in the House and a Senate that is tied 50-50, flat tied, only with ties broken by the Democratic vice president.
But, you know, the tie or the thing that could prevent getting rid of the filibuster or prevent going outside of the constitutional mandates on adding a new state to the union and so forth really come down to one man, don't they? That's Senator Joe Manchin. I mean, he relying on his backbone to stand up for what he's, because he says he's not for D.C. statehood being done by a simple majority. He's not for packing the court. He is for changing the filibuster a little bit. He's not too happy with the way it is right now. But can we really depend on the backbone of one politician?
Well, I think it's more than Joe Manchin. We do not know what the vote would be on changing the filibuster, and that would have to be the prelude to any of these other changes that you talk about, because what you would have to have is a change of Senate rules on a 50-50 vote plus the vice president. And there are indications that there may be more than just Joe Manchin among Democrats who oppose this. There are always. You could look at, oh gosh, I should give you a few
I didn't mean
examples.
to sandbag you here, but I keep hearing of these other moderate Democrats, but I can't find them.
Feinstein has said, no, Feinstein has said she's worried about it. A number of other Democrats have privately said they're worried about it. Every Senate, there are members of the majority who remember being in the minority and know that they will be in the minority again.
It's true, but at the same time, the pushback by the hard left in the Democratic Party is so hard that the president has folded so many times because of that pushback, the most recent being on this cap of refugees, that I just wonder if it'll happen. Meanwhile, Byron, people are voting with their feet, that they don't like to be taxed too much and they don't like over-intrusive government regulation or just intrusive government in general by moving to states like Florida and Texas and so forth. But there's a concern on the part of some of the locals in those states that these people who are moving to their state to avoid big government may be bringing some of their voting patterns with them. Here, I want to play a soundbite from Sheriff Grady Judd. He's of Polk County, Florida, and some of his concerns about that. Watch it and then get your response.
My message is clear. You know, when you come to Florida, you come for low taxes, low crime, and you want it to be warm in the winter. Well, if you come here and vote the stupid ways that people have up north, you're going to have a warm winter, but you're not going to have low crime. You're not going to have low taxes. So come here and enjoy this beautiful state where we care for the people.
So will the rest of America begin to look more like Florida and Texas, or will Florida and Texas begin to look more like California, New York?
Well, first of all, this new census shows that the trend of Americans moving south and west continues. Texas picked up 2 seats. New York has lost 13 congressional seats since 1970, and Texas has picked up 14. Now, what you're saying, though, is real. I mean, look at Georgia. I mean, in this last election, 2 Sunbelt states, one in the southeast, one in the west, Georgia, Arizona, both went for Joe Biden.
Yep.
Really close, but they both went for Joe Biden. So there's no doubt a concern in a lot of states that, if lots of people move from California to Texas, do they want to remake Texas in the image of California, even though that's why they left?
Yeah.
That could happen. But so
well, and it is in some counties like Austin, for example, that is happening. Yeah, no, it's really the question of the next 10 years of American politics. What is going to happen? Will the rest of the country look more like Texas and Florida? That's what I'm betting on, by the way, if anybody wants to take me up on that bet. Byron, thank you very much for being here. Great to see you. I appreciate it.